Okay, and take it away, Andi.
Right. Hello, everyone. I'm saying good evening. Where I am in Central Virginia, it is evening. It's just about 8 o'clock. I know the time is all over. So, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for being here. This is super exciting. I am Andi Richardson. I'm the general manager of Founatin Bookstore in Richmond, Virginia, and I am beyond thrilled to be presenting this panel tonight. I want to thank Bookstore Romance Day and Billy and Harlequin and Karina for setting this up. This is a panel of amazing authors. I think we're all in for a treat. So what I'm going to do is chat with our guests. I'll introduce everyone in just a moment. If we have time at the end, we are going to do a Q&A portion. So if you have questions, pop them in the chat, I believe there's a little question tab, pop them in there. If we have time, we will get to your questions. But now let's chat with our guests, and I'm going to go in order. I have them on my screen. So please help me welcome, starting with Jess Everlee. Jess is the author of The Gentleman's Book of Vices, which is coming out on November the 29th. Jess, welcome. Can you give us
Hi.
a little rundown about your book?
Yeah, so The Gentleman's Book of Vices is a gay Victorian era romance that follows a optimistic dandy who's an erotica collector as he goes to get the autograph of his favorite author and finds a grumpy, paranoid, failing bookseller who seems to be actually just exactly what he needs. And that bookseller, Miles, can use a little sunshine in his life. And so, kind of in spite of the issues of the time period for queer love, they have their love story. So that's Gentleman's Book of Vices.
Love it. Thank you for being here.
Of course.
Angelina, you're up next on my screen. Angelina M. Lopez is the author of After Hours on Milagro Street. And can we appreciate this gorgeous cover, please, everyone? This is out on your bookshelves now, so I'm assuming everyone already has it and has gotten to appreciate it. But Angelina, please give us a little rundown.
Hi, yeah, this is After Hours on Milagro Street. It is about a badass bartender, Alex Torres, who comes home to claim the family bar, and in the process runs into this very East Coast, head in the clouds, East Coast professor, but he's incredibly hot professor who is kind of standing in her way. So it is a book, small town, Latinx, high heat, enemies to lovers, kind of opposites attract book. Yeah, it's been out since July 26th, and it's a little bit of my family background. It's about Mexicans in Middle America, and that's where I'm from. So yeah, great to be here today, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely delighted. Stefanie London, you are up next. And Stefanie brings us Pets of Park Avenue. I'm super lucky on these last two because I got some bound manuscript copies. I got even before the ARCs. So this one comes out December the 6th. So we're coming up soon on this one. Stefanie, welcome. Tell us a little bit about the Pets of Park Avenue.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Stefanie London. I actually do have the proper ARCs. They literally just arrived 2 days ago, so very exciting.
Perfect.
Pets of Park Avenue is the second book in the Paws in the City series, with the first book being the Dachshund Wears Prada. And this book is a second chance romance about what happens when two people who get drunkenly married in Vegas end up splitting up, but then figuring out that they are actually supposed to be together. So this is a second chance, lots of like emotional healing. There's also an adorable little doggo in this one because I love writing about pets. And the heroine in this is a certified hot mess who's trying her best to get her life together. And the hero is a hot but very stuffy, uptight IT nerd. And which is I married one of those, so it's my personal favorite. And it's a really funny romance. It's heartfelt. It's quite steamy in places, and really hits home with that second chance romance. So if you like people getting back together, this is a good one to check out.
I love it. And I also am a huge fan of the cute dog names in the book. I love that. We're going to talk about that. Last but absolutely not least is Naima Simone. We have Mr. Right Next Door, and that is coming out. Oh, we have to wait until January for this one, January 10th. But Naima, tell us a little bit about what's going on in Rose Bend with this one.
First of all, I'm super excited to see you have it because I don't have it yet.
I feel extra lucky. Isn't it pretty?
Okay, just smell the pages for me real quick.
I will. Magic.
Okay, I'm going to vicariously through you. Mr. Right Next Door, if you followed the Rose Bend series, is the story with Jenna Landon, and she's been the mean girl through the series. And this is her redemption arc. And it's the first mean girl I've written. And if you read the last book, you kind of start getting a little bit of her story. And this is like her whole happily ever after. And Mr. Right Next Door is actually moved in right next door to her, and they get off on a very rocky start. The hero is an ex professional wrestler, like WWE, but not WWE because we can't use that. Wrestler who's now a wrestling coach, and they just do not get along at first because she's very proper, he is not, and he's moved to Rose Bend to take this new job, but also to find his life after wrestling and to figure out where he's going. And she just needs to figure out who she is, because outside of this mean girl persona, because she wants to change who she is and to figure out who she is. And she plans on leaving Rose Bend to do that. But now she's met this guy who is kind of changing her mind about that. And so this is their story and how they find each other, find their own selves, find healing, because they both have their issues. And spoiler alert, they do have a happily ever after, and she stays. I don't think I'm ruining that by telling you that.
I feel like it's a safe thing to assume. We avoid spoilers, but I think that's probably okay to say.
Right, yeah.
Excellent. So I would love to talk about the genre of romance, and obviously we all love it. All of our attendees love it. At Founatin, where I work, we are huge proponents of romance. We have a customer-run romance book club that focuses on diversity in the genre. You all do a really good job of that as well. So I would love to hear what you all think about how the genre has evolved over the years and where you think it's going to go next. And Angelina, we're going to start with you this time.
I'm turning 50 next year, and I started reading when I was 12. And I would say I read for the first 20 years-ish, not expecting, never seeing myself. And because it was such the norm that in media, that I not only didn't see myself, I didn't expect to see myself. And when I was in my mid-20s when I decided I was going to write romance, and it was The White Lady, and it was so ingrained. And it really took writers younger than myself and people younger than myself to say, this is a bunch of crap that we have been absorbing for a very long time, and that we don't have to accept this, and that people of color don't have to look to, white faces in media to tell the story of love for us. And so I really embraced that when, again, it was almost very much a wake-up call about, perception. And so in my debut book, she's a billionaire businesswoman. It's a book called Lush Money. She's a billionaire businesswoman. And as I was just writing the initial, first, paragraph, it was like self-made billionaire businesswoman, delete, self-made Mexican-American billionaire businesswoman, because why not? And so there has been this massive evolution in who deserves love, who gets to be their love story. And we are really embracing that in romance, who gets to tell that story. And I am definitely an example of a person who needed that wake-up call to even see myself. The image I see in me in the mirror, I was not giving that love story. And it took a wake-up call for me to duh, of course, So I think a lot of us have had duh moments, and a lot of people have angry moments. And I think we're doing I hope, a better job of making sure everyone feels included in a love story. You're muted. I think you're muted, Andi.
I have no idea how I even did that. I wasn't touching anything, so thank you. We're just getting the hiccups out of the way so we can have fun for the rest of it. Stefanie, how about you? What changes have you seen in the genre over your time as a reader and a writer? Where do you think it's headed next?
I feel like there's been two big things. I have to admit, I actually haven't been reading romance probably as long as a lot of people have been. I really only started reading romance probably about 10 years ago. But in that time, I have noticed a big increase in the amount of kind of on-page consent. I write reasonably high heat romance. And so there's always multiple open door sex scenes in my books. And something that I really notice now is a lot of emphasis on making sure that the characters are saying, yes, I want to do this, and kind of putting that enthusiastically on the page. Whereas I feel like even 10 years ago, the consent was there, but perhaps it was a little bit more sort of subtle in the writing, whereas now it is quite explicit. And the other thing I've really noticed is something that I find great is that there's more plus size representation in stories. I'm a bit of a floating head currently, but I am a plus size lady, and it is nice to see curvy girls getting their happily ever afters as well. Actually, the third book in my Paws in the City series has a plus size heroine. I have really embraced writing more curvy women in my stories, and writing about curvy women that don't feel like they need to change who they are in order to have love, that they embrace themselves, and the guys are totally hot for it and everyone's down with the curves. And I love that.
I am here for a curvy heroine. I love it. Love it. Naima, your series is also super diverse. So talk to us a little bit about what you've seen, the changes, and where you want it to head next.
Well, yeah, I just co-signed what Angelina and Stefanie said. Like, definitely diversity, of course. The first that I recall, first Black woman I saw on a page was Sandra Brown. I think it was French Silk, and it was like thrilling to see a woman who looked like me. It wasn't by a writer who looked like me, but the character, and she was just a side character, but I clearly remember she was this supermodel with this big hair, bold and sexy. She was killed, but but it was like thrilling to see someone who looked like me on the page. Like, for a moment, I went back and I had to make sure that she was Black because I couldn't believe it. And then, of course, I discovered like Brenda Jackson, and it's like, okay, there are writers who look like me, who are writing stories with characters who represent me. And since then, that to me, that was rare. I had to go look for those books. Now we're so prevalent, not as much as we should be, but hopefully the trend is that we're moving that way. Mm-hmm. But in that, so of course, diverse, and I purposely include that in my books, especially with Rose Bend, because I want to write a setting of a world that I would love to live in, where diversity is just the norm. It's just acceptable. It shouldn't even really be pointed out because it's just what it is. Yeah. And people embrace that, and it's okay. We have a Black store owner who's professional. Okay. We have, it's just acceptable. But also another thing that I've noticed is just the fearlessness of a lot of writers in romance. We're touching subjects that we maybe weren't allowed to touch years and years ago, like mental health, social issues, plus size heroines, like Stefanie said. We're touching on all these issues, and that we might not have considered sexy, or alternative lifestyles like BDSM, and incorporating them in our stories and making them a part of the story, not afraid to touch it, not afraid, even forbidden romance. Like, and we're just like embracing it. We're talking about it. We're making wonderful, wonderful stories about it. We're pushing boundaries. I think of Sierra Simone's like Priest. Would that book have been written when I was like 15? No. But now it's like everybody knows about that book, and it's so fabulously written. This is what we expect now in our romance, and we're just embracing it. And that's where I think I would love to see that evolution continue. I'm excited to see where we go next.
Absolutely. And Jess, your book is very much something that we would not have seen when we were all growing up, being the male, especially in the Regency era, which I love that you said it there. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, so so Stefanie said that like she was new to romance, but like I only started reading romance probably in like 2019, not super long before starting the Gentleman's Book of Vices, because I was just like, I was writing fantasy before, and I was so excited about this new genre. I was like, okay, next project is gonna be a romance project. And at that time, I mean, I started writing it fully expecting to self-publish it. There was stuff out there, there were people who were writing it even before that, like 2019, 2020 time. But it was considered pretty niche, and a lot of it was indie and self-pub. And when I finished it, I like sent out some queries, and I got some very like complimentary rejections, like, "Oh, this is great, but it's too niche. I don't know what I'm going to do with it." And I really only sent it to Karina on kind of a whim. I was preparing myself to self-pub, but the change in the industry, especially around queer stuff, it was rapid. I watched it unfold literally while working on and pitching this project, and the landscape changed from the first word I put down to actually putting it out into the world. I think that is just so exciting. I wonder if like I want to see more historical. I feel like people maybe like some folks maybe have trouble like imagining these happy endings happening for queer people in the past, but if you research, you find them. You find love stories too. They don't look like what we think of as traditional romance. Often they don't have happy endings depending on the time period, or they're really pulpy. There's like stuff from the like mid-century era that you can go find. But I don't know, it's really cool to kind of see this unfolding so rapidly. I'm super excited to see where it's going, like soon, who knows? It's really cool.
And I love that a publisher like Harlequin, that's been around for 75-ish years, I believe, is still evolving and changing and producing such great new work.
Absolutely.
So now I want to go back to your gateway romance. I'm especially curious with the little bit more newbies of romance readers. I would love to know what your gateway romance was. What book or author did you read that really got you into the genre? And Stefanie, it is your turn to start.
So I actually started reading romance around the time I started writing romance, which is maybe a little bit of an odd way to go about it. And I remember telling my mum, "Oh, I want to write a romance novel. I feel like stories about people like that connects with me." And she literally went to like our local, what we call an Australian op shop, which is like a charity shop, and came home with a stack of Mills and Boon Harlequin category books. And I just devoured the entire stack and was like, why have I never read these before? They're amazing. And I think the first one I read might have been a Kate Hardy. It was there was a hot doctor like saving someone's life on a plane, and it was so dramatic. I was like, this is like Days of Our Lives in the Sky. I'm so here for this.
I love it. Naima, how about you? What was your gateway romance, book or author?
I want to say, okay, I have two that left an impression on me, so I'm just going to say they were.
Sure.
Like I used to go into, my mother worked third shift, so my sister and I used to wait until she would go to work, and then we would go into her romance stash and like get the books. So the first one I think that really imprinted on me was Joanna Lindsay's Fires of Winter. And it was a Viking romance, and the heroine was kidnapped, and I think we see a trend. And it was so hot to me back then. It was just so, and she was so fierce. Brenda was so fierce. Oh, it was great. And then the book with my first alpha, grit your teeth alpha, was The Hawk and the Dove by Virginia Henley. Yeah. That book was great. It was great. I think that even had some kink in it.
Ooh. I love that. Now I'm going to have to go back and I don't know that I've read that one. I'm going to have to go back and check.
It was great.
Yes, Joanna Lindsay is super formative for a lot of us, I think. Angelina, how about you? What was your gateway into the genre?
My mom had Kathleen Woodiwiss, who is, the birth of modern 73 on romance, but the format that we know, Kathleen Woodiwiss, and my mom had, she had Flame in the Flower, but the first one I read was her Rose in Winter. And it had such an impact on me. And I was a, early reader and read a lot. And I was very kind of secretive about my romance love and just kept reading and reading. But it was the one place that I had later in 8th grade, I had moved to San Francisco, and it was my first like mean girl experience. And at the end of the day, after just a rough day, I would go to the local B. Dalton in the mall and buy a book for $3.99, some Bettina Cron, and go home, and I would just read that for 6 hours. And it was the only thing that allowed my brain to rest. Understanding I was 8th grade, I was going to graduate, I was going to go to high school. I could not manage the mean girls. I could not make this stressful situation change or affect it. What I could do is get through it. And these romance novels, these big, thick escapist pirate, all of, whatever craziness was going on, was the one thing that would allow my brain to relax. And so unbeknownst to me, like in the 8th grade, I realized that the benefits of escapist self-care and the value of it. And this idea that it's, unimportant or unnecessary or something that just a certain type of reader does. I really demolished at that point because I really understood I didn't understand, but I kept going to these romance books as a place to be like, I can't change this, which is a lot of the things we manage in our lives. I can get through it and I can mentally relax from it. And this is the one thing, this escapist love story. And love is what so many mediums deal with, but this is the one thing that allowed me to do that. And so it was out in my mid-20s that I was like, wait, does any shame I have about this genre or secretness about wanting to write it, wanting to read it, I'm done with, because kind of the structure of what we understand romance was written by other people. It's something we've ingested. It's not the truth of what the reality of these escapist love stories that, when I was reading were predominantly about a woman's journey. That is obviously, and for good reason, changed, but it had so much value. And so Gateway was Kathleen Woody-West, but it's been, my whole life, and understanding how wildly important these stories are, and, and just how beneficial they are to the readers.
It's true. You're right. And I think with everything that's been going on in the world the last couple of years, we have all needed that escape. And we've seen romance sales going up. Hopefully you all have too. It's just, we want to know that we're going to open this thing and there will be happiness. And maybe even if it's a little bit, testy in the front, there's going to be happiness and joy and love. And we all need that.
Yeah. And just the mental health benefits of just, it's going to be fine in this one place. It's going to be fine.
Reading Nook is your safe space.
Yeah.
Jess, how about you? How did you get into it?
So my gateway romance was Tiffany Rice's original Sinner series, starting with The Siren. I'm just gonna admit it. When I was like, a while back, I came from literary fiction and science fiction fantasy, and I had all the misconceptions about romance that you would think that I would have, like coming from that area of the literary world. But I don't know why I picked that one up. I had heard about it a few times. I was like, oh, it's kinky. Oh, that's cool. I didn't even know about these subgenres. I didn't know you get a kinky romance. I didn't know you could get a fantasy romance. There was all this crazy stuff that I didn't even know was around. And so I read it and I was like, oh, this is funny. This is hot. This is really clever. It's super, one of the best written books I didn't ever read. I was like, oh, I have made a terrible mistake. And so I've been sort of exploring the genre ever since, just checking out different kinds of subgenres and types and all kinds, from the Tiffany Rice and the Sierra Simone to the Amish I've read a little sprinkle of everything just to see what's out there, because I had no idea. That's very exciting.
Tiffany is an agency sister, Jess, so I'll make sure to let her know she was your gateway drug.
I
love that.
I have signed copies of the last 4 books in the series on my shelf up there, so that would be great. Love that.
Tiffany is awesome. And I like you said, there's something for everyone. There's Amish romance, there's barbarian ice princess romance. There is truly something for you. No matter what you like, there is a romance for it.
There's orc romance.
Yes. I love it.
Tentacles.
You could go so many places with that. And I bet Tiffany Rice could do that one really well too, actually.
Perhaps,
literally.
yeah.
So speaking of, and now I try not to do yes, no questions when I'm doing a panel like this, but I can't help it with romance. Is it truly romance if there is no happily ever after? Angelina, you're first.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It's
Definitely.
the one promise. It's the one promise we make to the readers. It's the only promise we're making to the readers, because they're wildly diverse, because we have all of these stories, because we can go all these places. People talk about tropes, favorite tropes. And I always say a trope is just a wire hanger, enemies to lovers, that's a wire hanger. Secret baby, whatever you want to call it, billionaire, that's a wire hanger. Every author dresses that wire hanger a different way. You know, they bring all of their skill, they bring all of their life experience, they bring all of their kink, they bring everything to it, and they dress it differently. Then the reader comes and they're 50% participant, they're bringing all of their perception to it. And so romance is just so wildly divergent, and it's got all this potential and all this fun stuff and all of this glow that you can put on these tropes. The one promise we make everybody is a happily ever after. If you do not have a happily ever, it is not a romance. It is, you know, it's not.
I love it. Would the rest of you all agree? I feel like that was a really great
like
point.
what she said.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, you can call it a love story if it doesn't have a happy ending, and you can go and play with Nicholas Sparks, but if it's a romance, it has a happily ever after end of story.
There you go. All right. Well, this brings me to my question about tropes, and now I'm afraid to ask Angelina.
I'll go last.
Okay. So, Naima, we're going to start with you on this one. Favorite or least favorite trope to write? You can, if there's one you love, if there's one you really don't love. Talk to me about tropes.
I guess if you read my books, you can tell which ones I love. I love a forbidden romance trope. The more forbidden it is, the more I love to read it and write it, because it's like the conflict is just built in, the angst is built in. I love a marriage of convenience because I love how they just play themselves and think that they're really going to stay platonic, you know, and we all know it's not going to end that way. Same. And I love enemies to lovers because of the banter. My least favorite, and I just talked about this actually. I think my least favorite, one of them, I don't have a lot, but one of them would be the love triangle. And it's just a pet peeve, and it's because I'm like, girl, guy, don't be wishy-washy, get off the fence, make up your mind who you like, you bumping uglies with everybody, I can't handle it, decide, make a decision, and go for it, because all the back and forth gets on my nerves. I just can't. I just can't. So that would be like my least favorite.
I gotcha. I'm with you there. Jess, how about you?
I loved writing the second book in the Lucky Lover series, of Friends to Lovers, and I loved that. I had so much fun writing that. You do have to kind of like come up with a reason that they haven't gone for it over 15 years or whatever. But once you get over kind of figuring that out, it's just, there's so much just like stuff. They have so much history, and it's just like it's very like rich to mine all of that and put the story together. And then in terms of like least favorite, I don't know that I'd say like I don't like it, but I found doing a hate to love, or even you could go more extreme to an enemies to lovers, I found that very difficult to write. The pacing is really tricky for that, to make sure you've got enough tension while they still don't like each other, and then when do they like each other, and like how does it build? I found that to be not unenjoyable, but really hard, really a big challenge.
I feel that. And Angelina and Naima, you both do it so well, where it's more of like a rivals to lovers, where it's not enemies so much, because you don't want to start out with people that are being, mean and getting over that. But I do love the sassy spark between some rivals. Stefanie, let's talk tropes. How about you?
If anyone's read any of my books, they'll probably realize pretty quickly, I love a fake relationship. That's like got to be my number one. That whole like, oh, we have to kiss because we're pretending to, and then they're totally into it. That's like my favorite thing ever. I feel like it has a lot of inbuilt tension. It's got that forced proximity that I really like. And I also love like working together as well for the same reason, because the characters are kind of like stuck in combustible situations where they are like hot for each other but can't admit it on some level. That's like a dynamic that I really enjoy, because I think it's where I love writing banter. So like that's where all the great dialogue comes from. It's where this tension and the sparks come from. And I love that moment when they finally like tip over into like admitting to themselves that, oh, actually maybe there is something really here. For my least favorite, I'm going to say something potentially career limiting, and actually say second chance is my least favorite to write. But hear me out. It's because I take forgiveness very seriously as a person. I'm a person that's very like slow to trust and like slow to let people in. And so if someone breaks my trust, I find that really hard. So I find writing second chance romances really, really tough emotionally. I cry a lot when I write those books, and it's a lot of emotion comes out. But I think they end up being very satisfying. But the writing process of a second chance is quite the emotional roller coaster for me.
Definitely. And you did a great job. You could never tell that it was something that you were struggling with. So kudos. And Angelina, I'm afraid, but lay it on me.
I love them. And if anyone ever read my book, if you know the trend where you have the cover and then you have all the arrows pointing and it says what the tropes are, mine are just chock full of tropes and like chock full of arrows. It's like, I just stack and stack and stack and stack. If I like, my favorite thing to do, like put a bunch of words in a bag and then I pull out 3 words and I'll be like, I'll write a story about that. That's how I'm about my tropes. Like, give me the trope and I will just lay it in there. And then also tell me the trope you hate, because I then will be dedicated to writing that trope where you just cannot get enough of it. Like, I love the challenge of like, I hate that trope, or that trope will never work. And like, wait, just let me put some clothes on it. Let me put some clothes on it and let what this looks like, right? I mean, Naima knows, like, it's like you just play with them and you mix them all together. And I just love them. I absolutely adore them. And there is no trope that I love the most, and there is no trope I love the least. I mean, I like the tropes where somebody gets to push somebody up against a wall and be like, I don't want you, but I do. I mean, I love anything, any dance that involves that. But when I do a trope, I mean, I just really take it to the nth degree, of the enemies to lovers. They are starting at, as 180 from each other as they can be, because when they get to that center point and travel that book together for the last half, it's just so satisfying. It's really satisfying as a reader, super satisfying as a writer making that. So anyway, yeah, there is no trope that I do not like, and I'm like, give them to me. I'll do whatever.
I love the challenge. I love it. That's gonna make me look.
I will say that I don't really care for a love triangle, but if you wrote it, Angelina, I would read it. Because I would trust you could write the hell out of it.
It's so funny
and make you love it.
Laverne Spencer is one of my old school favorite one of my old school favorite writers. And if you read her books, the original stuff, every single book's a love triangle, and she makes it like your heart is ripped out and you're so hot, and it's just, they're so well done. I'm gonna send you a rec, Naima, because
okay, all right, do that.
Yeah,
change my
so
mind.
Amazing.
Oh, Laverne Spencer is just her books are phenomenal.
Amazing.
And I'm blanking on the name, but there was one where it was a nun who falls for a widowed father, and he's got these 2 little girls, and it's so good.
Yeah.
You had me at nothing.
Right?
I'm gonna look up what the name of it is, and I'll let you know. It's great.
Yeah.
So let's talk series. Between you all, we've got varying degrees of books in the series. We've got 2 firsts, and then a second, and I think a 4th for Naima. So I would love to know how y'all feel about writing a series versus a standalone. And let's see, Stefanie, I believe it's your turn to start.
I am totally team series. Like, I like a good standalone to read, but I think the way that my brain works as a writer, I like fleshing out the world is part of my favorite process in writing a book. And if I had to do all that fleshing out and then it was one book and I had to leave that place, I don't think I'd feel ready. I love knowing all of the connections that the characters have, and I write a lot of groups of women. A lot of my series are based around groups of female friends or sisters, or other kind of interconnected women in a workplace. It's just something about female relationships that really appeals to me in the romance genre. And so, yeah, I don't know. I'm always looking for those little extra connections, and then a character walks on the page and I'm like, oh, I wonder what their story is. And my brain just goes off in a different direction. So I don't know that I could write more than a handful of standalones, and I would almost always have to stop myself from filling out that world and giving every character their own story.
Mm-hmm. Creating that space in that town and that friendship you want to keep coming back to. Jess, how about you? You're another first in the series.
I also like writing a series. I tend to write side characters that want to take over, and so it's easier to keep them from taking over if I know that they can have their own book, where they can run the show. Then I can kind of let them. They can chill out in the first book, and you read the book, so there's a lot of side characters who want to take over want to
And
take
I
over
want to
the
hear all
story.
of their stories, so I can't wait to see what's next.
Yes, so that's that. I like that part of writing a series.
Angelina, how about you? This is the first in the Milagro Street series.
Yes, it is. And anyone who read, so Lush Money and the Filthy Rich series, my first series, my billionaire in the first series who's developed her kind of empire in San Francisco is actually from Freedom, Kansas, which is where Alex and Jeremiah meet. And the whole is, so I'm like doing the Stephen King thing where it's like everyone is going to be, and I talk about Roxanne Medina, this billionaire in this book. So yeah, I mean, I love the whole world. That being said, I love writing novellas and short stories for anthologies and things that I disconnect entirely from the other world I am. I really love having a goal, getting there and being done with it and swept aside. I have not written a standalone yet beyond novellas and short stories, but there is a tremendous freedom in that kind of really compartmentalized story that you deliver to the reader, wholly. And so life is long, and hopefully my writing career is as well. So yeah, I can see doing both. But yeah, obviously I love series because I can't even move from, in two separate series, I am combining everyone together. So
that way you can also tie up some loose ends. If you left anything, you can go back, or even, throw another little Easter egg out there. I like
that. 100%.
Naima, how about you?
Obviously I love writing series. Like I was just sitting here and I was just thinking back on the books that I've written. I'm like, I think I just have literally like a handful of standalones, and then the books that I intended to be standalones, I went back, like novellas, I went back and put characters in that world. So even when I want them to be standalones, I go back and I make them connected in some way to another book. But I love series. I love writing families. I love writing brotherhoods, like whether they're actual brothers or chosen brotherhoods, friends who bond. And I love writing that. And so it always ends up a series. And I think I go into it like that when I'm planning it. Like with Rose Ben, when I was thinking about the series, I planned the family first. I actually went into it writing down the family members. And as I'm writing down the family members, I'm thinking about, well, what could their story be? And as I'm writing the first book, I'm always weaving in a little bit of the characteristics and the story, and a little bit, just sprinkling in a little bit of the story of the next character and what their history or their backstory could be. So the reader becomes familiar with them and wants their story. So I'm always thinking like that, even when I don't intend to, because I want to continue to visit that world. Because I think when I read, one of the things I love reading about series is always going back and visiting characters who have become familiar to me to see where they're at, because they become like friends and family, like the kind you kind of stalk. And that's what I want to do. I want readers to stalk my characters.
I want to spend time in Rose Bend. It sounds like the cutest little town. It sounds like so much fun. I want to go visit. And that actually is a perfect lead in to my next question. I would love to hear, this is a two-parter. So Naima, you kind of answered this for me already. When you're starting your series, do you already have the next several planned out? Do you just go as they come? And what can you tell us about the next book in your series? So Jess, let's start with you, because you did mention a little bit about book 2 already. What can you tell us? What are you allowed to tell us, of course?
So I did not go in knowing what the sequels were going to be. I just kind of populated it with these side characters, and I was like, well, when it's time to write the next one, I'll just decide whose story I want to write most. And so once I got done, I, set gentlemen's aside. I was like, all right, who are we going to do? Who are we going to do? So I picked, if you've read it already, Noah, who's one of Charlie's friends, and David Forrester, who's the owner of the gay bar that they go to. And they were, and I was like, oh, they already know each other. So I guess we're doing friends to lovers, right? Because they already are aware of each other, and just kind of went from there. I pantsed those first two books. And then so it's a rule book for Restless Rogues is the title of that second book. And that's coming next July. And that one's it's very emotional. It's like they're both very intense characters that have a lot of really, a lot of love for each other and have for a long time. So it's a nice story. And I can tell you that, and I can tell you the Curious Fox, the club is actually sort of at risk. So David's club is at risk. Noah has like a high stakes career, but he's still gonna come help his friend to try to save the club and do what they can do, and then they fall in love in the meantime. And so it was really fun to dive in with those characters. And then I had to plan the third book. I can't say too much about, but we've got more side characters, so I just picked the next one, like who's the next one, who do I want to do next. So I don't know, it was kind of fun to have that freedom to just kind of like select from this pot of fun characters.
And there's such a great group too. I feel like there's no bad choices in that for all of you. Honestly, everybody in these universes are going to be so much fun to stay with and keep reading.
Well, thanks.
So Angelina, how about you? Do you have, I suspect from what I have learned about you tonight, you've probably got a good bit planned out ahead.
Well, yeah, I would love to say it was choice. It was more my editor being like, you got to tell me the whole series. I'm like, do I? Come on. But yes, I do. I did have to send them proposals for 3 books, and they had to be like, okay, that sounds okay. The next book is Full Moon Over Freedom. It is, so the whole series is about 3 sisters who come home to save the family bar, and in the process save the small town they didn't realize they loved. So the second book is about the oldest sister, Jillian, who is, the perfect daughter, once perfect daughter, who is now divorced and comes home for the summer. And like in her mind, it's please God, just for the summer, comes home for the summer and runs into the, childhood friend turned bad boy turned artist, who is there also, who is there to kind of help her get her groove back. And he was the boy who taught her how. So it's all about the bad boy and the good girl and growing up. And it's a little bit about, I write about alpha heroines. I really write, I started to embrace the term unlikable heroines, because I think the reason we call women unlikable is we've kind of drank the tea about what makes women unlikable, which is like, it's claiming their space and making a priority what they want in it. And so I write unlikable heroines, and I'm okay with that. And book 2 is a little bit about what happens when the alpha heroine loses everything that she thought made her an alpha. What happens then? What happens when she comes home and it's got nothing in her mind, it's got nothing left. And so that comes out September 2023, and it's available for pre-order now. And then the third book is going to be about the baby sister, Sissy, and a character who was mentioned in the first book. It's a bit of a redemption arc.
Ooh, okay. Yeah. Now I'm going to go back and reread and see who I think it's going to be. Of course, no spoilers, but I'm going to make some guesses.
Excellent.
Stefanie, how about you?
Yeah, so the third and final book in the Pause in the City series is called Confessions of a Canine Drama Queen. And I actually started these books with the dogs. So there's a dog character in every book, and the dogs also have their own character arcs and relationship arcs with the people in the book, because I wanted to challenge myself to like just have the dogs be more than just a kind of a side prop. I wanted them to be like front and center of the book. So the third book is about August, who is she's Manhattan's like celebrity dog groomer, and the hero is her best friend's older brother, which is another trope that I love, sometimes gets a bad rap, but I really love best friend's older brother, little sister thing. And they actually have to take this extremely dramatic, belligerent husky to a dog talent competition in upstate New York. And it is also there's only one bed trope, which I also love. So they're stuck in this like cabin in the woods together at this like animal retreat, having to get this husky to behave that does not want to behave. And it's also a story that has a bit of a near miss. So they were 2 people that in their younger times were sort of in love with each other, but it just kind of never happened. And then he married someone else and became a widower. And so now he has a lot of baggage around that. She's a a really career-driven, super successful woman that doesn't want to have kids, which is something I've always wanted to write because I feel like you don't see that a lot in romance novels. And so they have this super awesome stuck in the woods one bed story together with this annoying dog just chirping them the whole time, and that's what I love to write.
I love it. I'm so excited. Oh, I was assuming it was going to be August, but I'm excited to see it coming. And I love The Only One Bed. That's awesome. Now, Naima, you give us little teasers. So I don't know if you know this because you haven't gotten a copy yet, but there is an extra little chapter.
Rub it in.
There is an extra bonus story. So you give us a little extra teaser of some more Rose Bend, but what can you tell us about what's coming next?
Book 5 is going to be about the next sister, who's Flo. And from this point on, like up till now, you've seen her working at the ice cream shop 6 Ways to Sundays, but she's actually a photographer. And so this is her book. And her hero is going to be, it's an age gap book. And he's also a single dad. And this is my forbidden romance coming in because, you know, I love me an age gap romance, and he's a single dad. And so she's a photographer, but she's also going to help him out and become his nanny. So that's hot. Yeah. So so she's going to find things from her past are going to come into play. Because you haven't read so much about her, but you're going to find out more about her past. And a figure from her past is going to come back to Rose Bend. And he's also dealing with his past, like with the divorce and everything like that. And he's here, and he's in Rose Bend too, because he's an architect and he's renovating a house. And so they get together, and that's pretty much all I know right now.
Sexiness ensues, I'm sure.
Right, yeah, sexiness ensues in the house.
Yes.
When the kid is in bed, so don't worry about that. You know, the
kid's sleeping, heavy sleeper.
That's all I can promise right now.
This is why you want to write child-free books, because with the kid around, you're like, when do we do it? This is hard. It is hard to get them to do it when the kids are around.
Like, but it makes it interesting, right? It makes it interesting because I gotta stretch this to 90K. So. Oh, can I say something though? I wanted to thank Stefanie because in the Dotson Wears Prada, right? I read that before I got my Dotson. And she wrote in that book, the Dotson is very high maintenance in that book, and it is hilarious. And the heroine gives the Dotson carrots in the food because the dog would not eat like regular dog food, like turned his nose up. So I actually went and bought carrots because my dog wouldn't eat his regular dog food either. So I went and bought carrots and put it in his food, and it worked. It worked. Yes. But note to everybody watching: do not put carrots in the microwave. They catch fire. You got to just put it in. Oh, what? They do. I have no reason. I don't know why, but they catch fire. Like, I know this from experience. But
we will all learn from your mistakes.
Please do. Thank you. Thank you, Stefanie. See, romance teaches us things. Romance teaches us things about like dog care. Like, it's just
the random stuff that we have to research for these books. I found out, fun fact, the reason that dachshunds are such a strange shape is because they were bred for badger hunting. And so in order to get down into the badger hole, they have to be really long and skinny. And so that's why they're shaped that way. So it's like Roman teaches you so many things.
That's right.
We have all gotten smarter tonight from all of these things that we are learning. Do not microwave carrots, and a dachshund was a badger. I love this. So I have couple more questions. I've got a serious one and then we'll end on a fun one. But one thing all of your books have in common is that the main characters tend to be people who are sort of the outcast or the black sheep, or maybe they don't quite fit in with their families. And I think it's neat that you all have this in common. And I'd like to know why you chose to go that route. And Angelina, we're going to start with you on this one.
You know, you're trying to give it's taking a really, really wide view back. You're talking about we're writing genre fiction and a compelling story. What's a compelling story arc? What keeps people reading for 45, 75, 100,000 words. And it's giving people a journey. Because our stories are so people-centric and they're so relationship-centric, that if the story starts with the person being comfortable in the relationships they're in, and they're not striving for anything, then we, again, wide view popular fiction genre, what exactly are we giving our readers? What exactly is the roller coaster that's going to keep them turning the pages? And so it's a very common technique that even if a character is doing fine in the previous book, say in a series like all of us are writing, that we need to put them in some kind of crux when the beginning of this book starts, whether it's, holistically relationships in their life, whether it's because they're stuck on an island someplace, whatever. But what is that crux? And I think a lot of us are writing, none of us are writing island books as far as I can tell right now. So, both Naima and I are writing people who are already in a small town. So those relationships are already started. And so it is, I think, just technique wise, craft wise, it's because the way I would explain it is we don't have a choice. I need them to be, I need something to keep people and reading for 100,000 words. And part of that is that journey they go through to, the inherent journey my characters already always have is they accept life a certain way, but they're not their integral selves. Through the course of the book and through the course of the love partner that they allow in their lives, they're making a choice to let that love partner in their lives. They learn who they essentially are and can reach a place of integral happiness that isn't just showy happiness. And so that's their journey. And so they unfortunately don't have a choice to not be some kind of complicated black sheep when the story begins.
And Naima, how about you? Because your character went through a big transformation of being the mean girl, and when she was mean, she was okay with her family, and then as she loosened up, that was where the conflict came in. So talk to us about
that. I tend to write a lot of black sheep or characters who aren't comfortable in the environment that they're in, and I think that's because you write what you know, even if the circumstances are different from book to book to book. The feelings of not being comfortable where you are, or not being accepted, or not being affirmed, or made to feel like you need to be one way when inside you're another, you want to be another way, you don't know how to fit into your square peg trying to fit into a circle, whatever. You write what you know, and growing up, that's what I knew. I was not for me, where I grew up, and even family members, I didn't always fit in. The schools I was in, I didn't always fit in. I went to the schools that I went to, the private schools I went to, most of the time, especially in high school, that I was the only one of few Black people. And then because I was a nerd and I read all the time, and the music I listened to, the clothes that I wore, how I spoke, I didn't fit in. And so growing up, I had to learn to love myself, and that took a while. And so writing characters like that is almost a form of healing. It's cathartic, and it's a way of continuing that process and showing that even though you are different, even though people may want you to fit into one mold, but you are another, it's okay to be different. It's okay to love yourself, even though somebody says you need to be one way in order to be accepted. And you need to find your village who will accept you how you are. And if you don't, self-love starts before you can accept the love of anyone else. And that's a theme that you'll kind of find in almost all of my books.
I love it. Jess, how about you? Talk to us about writing outcasts.
This is such an interesting question. I love it. It's like making me really think about the characters a little bit differently. Honestly, I feel I really relate to what Naima just said about kind of relating to that. It's just almost like a default mode to write a character who's a bit outcast. In Charlie in particular, something that I was trying to explore was the sort of like need to be really likable, optimistic, sort of fun, sort of out there, and that is a way to make people put up with the fact that you are not fitting in because they like this shine that you've put on. You become the sunshine. They like the sunshine. It's okay that you can't get your life in order and you're bad with money and you're definitely queer, but everyone's going to pretend that they don't know that. And so that was something that I just wanted to explore it further. And I do find that exploring those things through fiction is helpful for me and as a reader and as a writer. And so hopefully it can be helpful for other people to read that book. But in any case, yeah, it just kind of came that way because that's the way that I think and build characters for obvious reasons. In my own mind, I'm pretty aware of why.
And Stefanie, how about you?
As my mum called me a while ago after reading a few of my books, and she was like, "Darling, do we need to have a conversation? Because all your characters hate their families." And I was like, "No, they don't. They don't hate their families. They're just complicated." And that actually got me thinking about this topic of like, yeah, what is the reason that it's not always the family? Sometimes it's how they fit in their workplaces. Sometimes it's how they fit in with their friends, or the fact that some of my characters don't really have a lot of friends and they're lonely in life, and all of these different sorts of things. And I think ultimately for me, it boils down to the reason I write romance novels is because I want to let people know that you can love the ugliest part of yourself, and that you are, even with those parts, you are still worthy of love and acceptance in the world. I'm someone that's had a lot of self-esteem issues. I grew up in a ballet environment when I was young, and I had some pretty severe body image issues. And I didn't really fit in at school either. I was also a massive nerd and was bullied quite horribly for that when I was young. And I think a lot of those like formative experiences of feeling like a bit of an odd duck while everyone else is normal is like something that really drew me to the genre, because I love writing characters who are a little bit left of center, and that they manage to find the person that sees that as a real positive aspect of them instead of it being something that needs to be changed, which is why I would never write a curvy heroine that needs to lose weight, because I don't think that you should have to lose weight to find love. I don't think my nerdy librarian heroine who's super obsessed with dinosaurs needs to wear more normal clothing in order to get people to accept her. Like that kind of stuff. I think romance really is about self-acceptance at its heart, and that's totally the view that I take, and so sometimes it just means that the reflection of that is difficult relationships with the family. But Mum, if you're watching, I love you. I promise everything's fine.
I love it. And as we come to a close, I am going to throw out one more reminder. The link to purchase copies of all of these amazing books from these wonderful guests it's in the chat. It's from us at Fountain Bookstore. We ship all over. So no matter where you are, we will ship your book to you. So my last question is a quick one, and we're going to just go around because I'd love to shout out the indie bookstores. I would love to know which indie bookstore, or one or two depending, you consider your home indie bookstore. And Jess, we're going to start with you.
Elizabeth's Bookshop in Akron, Ohio. It's a pop-up location, and it does give part of every sale goes to the owner's nonprofit. It is Black woman owned from someone local to the community who grew up here, and it is just an incredible place. And I'll be doing my launch event there on December 3rd too. So Elizabeth Bookshop, they are incredible.
Awesome. Be sure to tune in for that, everybody. Angelina, how about you?
Here in Houston, there's Blue Willow Bookshop. It's a 30-plus-year-old, indie bookstore, woman-owned, huge proponents of romance. And then I moved from DC in 2020, and One More Page Books in Falls Church, Virginia, just completely embraced me and loved me and launched my career with me. And they have just been enormous support. Again, woman-owned. So One More Page Books in Falls Church, Virginia, and Blue Willow Bookshop in Houston, Texas.
Love it. Naima, how about you?
I don't know any local ones, like the ones
Fountain Bookstore it is.
Yeah. I will shout out Love Sweet Arrow in the Rip Bodice, because when I reached out to them and said, can I do a pre-order with you, they were all over it, as well as Inkling's Bookshop. Like they have the most wonderful giving people in those three bookstores ever. So, and Fountain Bookstore.
Arm twisted. And Stefanie, tell us your home bookshop.
I am actually going to be a terrible Canadian and recommend an Australian bookstore because I feel like Aussies never get a shout out in anything. So Robertson's Bookstore in Australia, they do have a couple of locations that are really wonderful bookstores, super friendly to authors. They have a really great selection of different types of books. And every time I go in there, I feel so much joy at how beautiful the stores are and how welcoming. And also their staff are super knowledgeable. So like if you ever have, like you need some guidance of what to purchase, they're really fantastic.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Billy and Bookstore Romance Day and Harlequin. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Stefanie, Jess, Naima, and Angela. Thank you, guests. Order these books so we can all talk about how fantastic they are the next time we are all in person. I hope you all have a fantastic evening, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.